ASEAN leaders gather as Australia warns of the threat of coercion in the region. Vacancy rates hit a record low, and is it the end of the boom period for the Magnificent Seven tech stocks? Welcome to Fear and Greed Business News, Australia's best business podcast. It is Tuesday, the 5th of March, 2024. I'm Michael Thompson, and good morning, Sean Aylmer.
Good morning, Michael.
Sean, after the show, you are speaking with Lee Howard, who is the CEO of AsiaLink Business.
Yeah, I sure am. Given ASEAN's on at the moment, no one better to talk to than Lee about what's going on, what it means for Australia to be hosting this, and what the Prime Minister, Anthony Albanese, expects to get out of it and what we can get out of it. It's a great chat.
Yeah, it certainly is. And I like the relevance as well to all businesses, because some of those stats that he went through are pretty alarming in terms of the number of businesses that export goods and services overseas, but don't actually pay much attention at all to our own region. And so it's just a really kind of worthwhile conversation and worth sticking around for. It comes up after the show. And that is the main story this morning. The ASEAN Leaders Summit kicked off yesterday, and Foreign Minister Penny Wong warned that the Indo-Pacific's character is under threat from coercion and the use of force.
Senator Wong pushed for the creation of new preventative architecture to help resolve tensions between countries in the region. She said the region's character, where no country dominates and no country is dominated, was under challenge. She didn't mention China, but she said there are claims and actions that are inconsistent with international law, particularly the UN Convention on the Law of the Sea. Senator Wong also announced almost $290 million in funding to boost maritime security and protection in Southeast Asia. Now, the meeting is the largest gathering of political leaders in Australia in about 6 years, and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese said the talks will primarily focus on promoting jobs and economic opportunity across Southeast Asia. As part of that, Mr Albanese said Australia stands ready to play a bigger role in Malaysia's pursuit of economic opportunity and growth, announcing the two countries will form new partnerships between their respective universities and vocational institutions, while also increasing their collaboration on managing cyber threats. So plenty going on at ASEAN over the next couple of days.
Yeah, there certainly is. And I suppose the other main story in politics yesterday, Sean, was really around the Liberals' policy on nuclear energy.
Yes, that was the domestic political story yesterday. There was a report in The Australian that opposition leader Peter Dutton will announce the coalition's signature energy policy before the May federal budget, and it includes a plan identifying potential sites for small modular nuclear reactors. Later in the day, opposition finance spokesperson Jane Hume came out and said Australia should be open-minded to the approach. Nationals leader David Littleproud called on the Prime Minister to hold a National Energy Summit to discuss the future of the country's energy mix and the role regional Australia plays. And then late in the day, the Prime Minister himself, Anthony Albanese, said the Liberals' nuclear energy policy doesn't stack up economically. So clearly, something we're going to hear a lot about in the next few months.
Yeah, we certainly will. All right, local markets, how did they perform yesterday?
Well, the S&P ASX 200 finished down just a touch to 7,736 points, but not before hitting a new all-time high of 7,769.1 points. The pullback in the afternoon reflected concerns that tomorrow's economic growth figures may show that the economy went backwards at the end of last year. More on that in a moment. Real estate investment trusts did best, while tech stocks outperformed. Healthcare and utilities companies underperformed. Gold stocks did well following the rally in the price of the precious metal over recent sessions. Northern Star Resources, Genesis Minerals, West African Resources, Gold Road Resources, and Perseus Mining all rose by 6% or more and were among the best of the top 200. Among the large caps, BHP was down 1.5%, Fortescue Metals was off 3%, Rio and CSL both fell 1%, Westpac was the best of the banks, up 1%, Goodman rose more than 2%, and WiseTech Global did pretty well. In corporate news, of course, earnings season is over, much quieter on the corporate news front. A couple of things yesterday worth a mention. Small cap GenX Power, its share price jumped more than 30% after J-Power, one of Japan's largest energy utilities, lobbed a $375 million bid to buy the Queensland renewables developer. And lithium developer Lake Resources said it's going to cut its staff in half. It had previously announced a 40% cost cutting. It's upping that on the back of the fall in the price of lithium. Its share price fell 11% yesterday.
International markets, what's going on?
Well, Goldman Sachs have done some work on Wall Street's Magnificent Seven: Apple, Microsoft, Nvidia, Alphabet, Amazon, Meta Platforms, and Tesla. They, of course, are the group of 7 stocks that have powered Wall Street last year and so far this year. And Goldman's, one of the world's biggest investment banks and best credentialed, suggests the golden run might be drawing to an end. Now, investors bought the 7 stocks aggressively in the first 3 quarters of last year and then slowed in the December quarter. Hedge funds were net sellers of the mega caps at the end of last year. Basically, that's saying they're betting that these mega companies won't be going, or their share prices at least, won't be rising too much more. The Magnificent Seven now make up just 13% of long US equity portfolios. What that means is long US equity portfolios, it's someone who's investing for the long term. So they're making up 13% of people like that, but they're actually 25% of the top 3,000 stocks. So clearly, some of these big investors are taking a bet against them. All 7 stocks, except Amazon, experienced a decline in exposure. It's not just Goldman's either. Capital Group said it had trimmed holdings in stocks whose outperformance had markings of a gentle bubble. Mind you, rockstar investor Ray Dalio, who founded Bridgewater Associates, reckons the Magnificent Seven look frothy but aren't in a bubble. Now, Apple's share price is down slightly so far this year. Tesla's off nearly 20%. Alphabet's flat. But the other 4 are doing okay. Microsoft's up 12%. Amazon's 18%. Meta is 41%. And Nvidia is up 64%. It's just when you start having stories like this, it often is a prelude to things turning around. Anyway, away from Wall Street, Japan's Nikkei yesterday climbed above the psychological level of 40,000 points for the first time ever, opening the door to further gains in its historic rally. And in commodity markets, oil and gold are steady. That's after gold went on a bit of a run late last week, and the Aussie dollar is buying 65.2 US cents.
Do those psychological limits have an impact? Sure. Like, is it actually hard for a market to kind of push past that? And once it's past that, it's like, okay, all right, it can keep going now.
There are points in a market where people are sort of, how do I describe this? They have sort of limits. And so if something reaches beyond it, they might sell it or they might buy it as a result. Now, 40,000 is more of a psychological barrier. Whether that's actually the number that people are going to buy and sell on, I'm not sure. But certainly the fact that you can get above that, kind of gives a bit of momentum to the market, I suppose.
Okay. All right. There's a bit going on. We'll be back in a moment with the rest of the day's business news. Sean, Australia's vacancy rate has reached a new record low of 0.7%, though there are signs things might get better for tenants with competition for new listings less intense.
The fall in the vacancy rate to a new low reflects rapid population growth, a sluggish construction sector, and rising property prices. Both Sydney and Melbourne have vacancy rates of 0.8%, according to the digital property group Domain, while in Perth and Adelaide, it's a miserly 0.3%. Wow, it must be tough work if you're looking to rent in those cities. The highest vacancy rates last month were in Canberra and Darwin at 1.3%. Domain's Chief of Research and Economics, Dr. Nicola Powell, said the number of prospective tenants per rental listing is easing, suggesting lessening of competition between renters. It supports the trend of slowing rental growth, suggesting demand is pulling back and could be an early indicator of an increase in vacancy rates sometime this year. Now, Dr. Powell said there are a number of first home incentives across the country, and the prospect of a Help to Buy scheme, along with interest rate cuts later in the year, could also alleviate the rental squeeze. Having said all that, building approvals in January disappointed, with dwellings given the okay falling by 1%. Now, less than 13,000 new homes were signed off for construction. It means over the 12 months to the end of January, 163,000 dwellings were approved for construction. That's about 2/3 the number needed to achieve the government's goal of building 1.2 million homes in the 5 years from July 2024. So it's a sector that still needs some help.
And just quickly, staying in the world of economics, Sean, a drop in inventories during the December quarter could mean the economy shrank in the final 3 months of 2023.
We'll get the economic growth figures tomorrow, and the Bureau of Statistics are providing some final bits of data that go into that final number. It said inventories declined a surprisingly large 1.7% in the quarter, and that could be enough to tip the economy into recession. Now, Michael, You might think inventories going down is good for the economy because it means people are buying stuff, which is true.
That was what I was thinking, Sean.
But it's actually the opposite in our GDP figures, because higher inventories suggest goods and services are being produced, output. So we like high inventories, not lower inventories. A bunch of retailers during the reporting season said they had destocked. That supports yesterday's data. Also yesterday, data on private sector wages and profits show that the economy was slowing at the end of last year. In fact, the private sector wages bill posted its smallest quarterly gain since the pandemic, while company profits outside the resources sector were pretty flat. It all adds to the argument that the Reserve Bank will need to cut rates later this year.
Sean, I'm going to ask you a question that
Yes.
might be very difficult for you to answer. How does the ABS measure inventories?
That is an excellent question. It's beyond my knowledge base to give you that particular answer. It's funny, when the national accounts is done, there are certain numbers, like the savings rate is kind of what's left over.
Mm-hmm.
But inventories has a specific measure, though I don't know the detail of how they specifically measure inventories.
You know who will know,
yes.
And you know what? I'll do the right thing and actually give him a little bit of notice, unlike what I do to you, which is spring these on you with absolutely nothing. So we're talking about Stephen Koukoulas, the Fear and Greed resident economist who features every Monday on The Week Ahead. And if he's listening to this morning, then, I mean, hey, you've just got your notice there, Stephen. But if not, next Monday morning, let's spring it on him.
Yeah. He'll be able to do it, without a doubt.
Yeah, okay, all right. Well, we'll save it for next Monday. Let's do that. Now, Sean, I don't know about this story. This is a bit alarming. A Qantas Boeing 737 collided with another Qantas 737 at Perth Airport on Sunday night on the way to the gate. Did cause only minor damage, though.
Yes, but how often have you been in a plane and you looked out the window as you're taxiing and you think, gosh, we're going to get close to that plane? Oh, wings, you know?
All the time, because it just feels like God, this is going to make you sound really dumb. Feels like the wings are really big.
Yeah.
It's like, have they factored this in for this turn?
Yes. So media reports suggest one of the planes was following the wrong track to the gate. That's another thing that I always find really interesting. When you're inside the terminal and you're watching the plane come in and you see how it sort of turns and that.
Yep.
Well, apparently this one was on the wrong track to the gate. That's what the suggestion is. The 737 from Canberra was approaching the gate at a speed of about 5 kilometres an hour when its wingtip clipped the wingtip of a stationary 737 at the adjacent gate. Little damage, no injuries, and a Qantas spokesperson said the captain assessed the situation and advised customers to continue to disembark as usual. However, it's one of those things that every time you're on a plane, you think about this stuff. The Australian Transport Safety Bureau will also investigate. It's likely to include the distance between gates at Perth Airport, the clarity of the track markings, weather conditions at the time, any fatigue issues, and the communication between ground crews and pilots. Are they trying to blame the guy that's standing there waving his arms in the air? I don't know.
Well, they're trying to blame the guy who painted the markings on the ground as well.
Yeah.
But if you worked at the Australian Transport Safety Bureau, you'd be like, oh, God, this is a lot of work for a minor fender bender.
Yeah. Exactly.
Well, we've got to measure weather, we've got to measure fatigue, we've got to go and check the track markings, we've got to check the communications. Oh.
It wouldn't be a fender, it's like a wing bing or something like that.
Yeah, tip to tip.
Yeah, tip to tip.
Let's move on. Downer EDI, Sean, is suing auditor KPMG for failing to detect accounting irregularities in the company's books.
When the irregularities emerged, about $500 million was wiped off Downer's market capitalisation. Downer will bring the claim in the Victorian Supreme Court as part of a class action lawsuit launched against the company by shareholders after the 2022 disclosure that it would have to restate profits by tens of millions of dollars due to misreporting of revenues and work in progress. KPMG, which has been Downer's auditor since 2014, said it was disappointed by the decision to bring the firm into the lawsuit.
And finally, Sean, the corporate watchdog has shut down nearly 3,500 investment scam websites in just 8 months. That is incredible, as the cost of living crisis pushes Australians to kind of consider ways of finding money. And obviously, these investment scams are preying on that.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, 3,500 websites. It's a lot of websites to close down.
That is huge. That's
Yeah, in just
that
8
is
months.
wow. That for ASIC, I mean, that's a job well done, isn't it?
Good on them. Actually, I'm trying to do the maths on this. It's probably 20 a day, or not far off 20 a day. Pretty amazing. Anyway, ASIC Chair Joe Longo said scammers are only too happy to try and take advantage of Australians looking for ways to make ends meet. It's part of ASIC's efforts to minimise and prevent consumer harm by targeting market integrity, greenwashing and insurance failures. Mr. Longo said in the half year to 31 December 2023, ASIC secured almost $60 million in civil penalties and 19 criminal convictions. It launched 83 new investigations, commenced 19 new civil proceedings, criminally charged 19 individuals, and completed nearly 350 surveillances.
All right, turning to international news now. Tonight, Sean, is Super Tuesday in the US, where 16 states with a combined population of around 135 million people vote on their preferred presidential candidate for their party.
So Republicans and independents vote for their preferred Republican nominee, and Democrats and independents vote for their preferred Democrat nominee. Now, there's actually 16 states for the Democrats, 15 states for the Republicans. The 16 states include some of the really big ones. Texas, it's got 161 delegates. California's voting as well. That's 169 delegates. There are also much smaller ones like Vermont with just 17 delegates. In the Super Tuesday primaries, if you win that, you tend to get all the delegates. So Texas, 161 delegates. If Donald Trump beats Nikki Haley in that, he gets all 161 delegates. It's not proportional or anything like that. It's highly unlikely that Republican challenger Nikki Haley will win any of the states over Donald Trump, and it is likely to be the end of her run for president. Having said that, she did win the vote in DC, the District of Columbia, over the weekend. So that gave her her first primary win. Good on her. But basically tonight's the big one. Biden obviously will sweep all, and I dare say Trump will sweep all as well.
And finally, Sean, how about this? This was the absolute A-lister event of the year. Guests included Mark Zuckerberg, Ivanka Trump, Bill Gates was there, Rihanna was there, all at the pre-wedding, mind you, this is the pre-wedding, not even the actual wedding yet, of the youngest son of Asia's richest person.
Reliance Industries chair Mukesh Ambani's son Anand will marry Radhika Merchant, who's also the child of a business tycoon in India. As you say, it's pre-wedding, and the festivities were held over the weekend. They included 1,000 VIP guests from around the world. If you were invited, you were offered a chartered flight service from Mumbai or Delhi to Gujarat, which is in the northwest of the country. There was complimentary hairstylists, makeup artists, and sari drapers, according to the Wall Street Journal. It was a 3-day event, included a performance by Rihanna, and others that attended included Walt Disney boss Bob Iger and Indian billionaire, who is well known to Australians, Gautam Adani. Michael, the wedding is scheduled for July. I just look forward to that spectacle.
Goodness me. And can you imagine then the wedding presents that would come?
Yes,
I mean, what does Bill Gates give as a wedding present? Like a small country or something? Like
a goat.
This is where those coloured diamonds come in, Sean, that we were talking about yesterday. The ultimate displays of wealth for the 1%.
What would their wedding list be like? Like, is there somewhere, Harrods of London has a wedding list?
Oh, the registry.
The registry, yeah.
Yeah, where they, where you register for your dinner set kind of, and your, like a new couch or something if you're really kind of aiming high.
When I got married, we had a gift registry, and one of my absolute closest friends gave me a colander, like a colander that you rinse things with.
Yes, for straining things.
Yeah, the straining things, just a bit rough, but that's all right. I mean, I'm great mates with him, and a beautiful man. And anyway, it's about a year or two later, he kind of broached and he said, "Look, you never ever mentioned that tablecloth we got you for your wedding. You got it, didn't you?" And I went, I got a colander from you. He goes, no. The colander was a sort of the second part. It was a bit of a joke. It was actually the tablecloth. Did you not get the tablecloth? And we did never get the tablecloth. So for about a year, I thought, that's pretty cheap. Mickey giving me a colander. They'd actually given us a beautiful tablecloth, which never arrived.
So both sides of the equation here. They thought that you were rude for never acknowledging the present, and you thought they were just a little bit kind of
cheap.
A little bit cheap.
Yeah.
So that could have driven you apart, and instead it didn't, and it brought you closer together.
As close as we've ever been, Mickey and I. Good man.
Oh, Oh, what a nice way to end the show. Actually,
Yes.
even better way to end the show, Sean, is to mention what our interview is today because, speaking of lovely men, Lee Howard, CEO of Asia Link Business, is your guest today.
Yes, all about the ASEAN conference that's going on and what it means for business and how business can benefit from this, and the whole idea that trading in our region has huge implications and benefits for Australian business.
Yeah, it is a really good chat. It's up next in the Fear and Greed playlist on your podcast platform or at fearandgreed.com.au. Thank you, Sean.
Thank you very much, Michael.
It's Tuesday, the 5th of March, 2024. Make sure you're following the podcast and please join us online on LinkedIn, Instagram, TikTok, X and Facebook. We are pretty much everywhere. I'm Michael Thompson and that was Fear and Greed Business News. Have a great day.